Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our webinar today. My name is Todd Rhodes. I'll be your webinar presenter today. Glad you could be with us. Appreciate everybody stopping in today as we get started here. We're going to share some of the results we released about 2 weeks ago, our annual church staff health assessment. So this year is the third year that we've done the assessment. This past year, 2025, in the fall, we did it. Almost 1,196 people, church staff people from across the United States took the assessment. We've done the same assessment for the last 3 years, same exact questions because we wanted to compare year over year. So now we have 3 complete years of assessment information. So about 3,400 total respondents to the church staff health report over the last 3 years. So what I'm going to share with you today, it's not theory, it's not a seminary paper. There's going to be a lot of numbers, so hopefully that'll be okay. But real people, real churches, real struggles, real points of happiness. There's going to be some that if you're watching it, you might think, oh, Todd's all doom and gloom. I'm not doom and gloom. I am so excited about the future of the church. But there are some things that we need to go over, some things that are a little concerning and some things that are really good about the staff assessments. I'm Todd. If you're not familiar with me, I'm one of the co-founders over at chemistrystaffing.com. I've been doing staffing stuff for, I started churchstaffing.com 26 years ago. It's hard to believe that it's been that long. But so I've been involved in staffing and helping churches with their staff for a good amount of time. And so I'm the church geek guy. My co-founder, Matt Steen, and I, we always say that we're church geeks. We're funny like that. But here's how I'm geeky. I spend a lot of my days thinking about why great people leave really good churches and how I can stop that from happening. So that's really a lot of the impetus for even why we do the assessment. So let's talk a little bit about the assessment really quick. And then the majority of the presentation today, I'm going to talk about 10 discoveries that we found in the church healthy church staff assessment from 2025 and over the last 3 years. Our methodology and demographics, this is all the boring stuff, right? In the last year, about 1,196 paid staff members. So these are part-time and full-time. And then over the last 3 years, about 3,400. So a really good sample all across all different states, geographic considerations, senior pastors, executive pastors, music, worship, youth, all different kinds of categories. So a really good representation all across the board, I think. And again, these aren't, I'm going to try and tell you when this is my opinion, but a lot of what I'm presenting to you, these aren't opinions. These are the actual scores that came in from all the staff members, their scores, their narrative responses that they gave to us, their frustrations, their strengths, all across the board. So let's look at the vitals. And this is really the first year that we've been able to see some of the trajectory. Last year it was just our second year, so we just had 2 data points. This year we've got 3 full years of data that we can kind of look at. And we measured 7 different categories across 50 different questions. So 7 categories: communication. We asked questions on job satisfaction and leadership and team dynamics and compensation and benefits. We asked questions on work environment and future stability. So 7 main areas, all 50 questions, total score, 250 possible points. And nobody got 250, by the way. I should give a prize to the highest. I should look it up and see who it was, but we won't do that today. But 6 different health bands from critical, which is all the way at the bottom. These are the ones that probably have a 1.5 feet out the door already, that are really unhealthy staff members, and all the way up to exceptional. And the median is about 190. The average this past year was 183.4. And when we started in 2023, it was 185.4. And that doesn't sound like it's too much of a drop. And honestly, it's not that big of a drop. But we are able to see after 3 years, it's not so much the overall score, it's looking at those health bands from the exceptional and the critical, where everything falls within those ranges, because that's where we're seeing a lot of change. This just tells you the 7 different areas. Job satisfaction was actually the highest, and we'll talk about that in a second. Lowest was compensation and benefits and future stability. Future stability is how long that staff member thinks they're going to be at their current church or their current role. Okay, so here's the big number that is frightening. If you think about it, 51%. This is discovery number one, and we call this the flight risk crisis. Okay, here's the number. 51% of church staff have seriously considered leaving their church job in the past year. 51%, that's over half. 44%, a different question we ask, 44% would consider an offer from another church today if they got another offer. Even if they weren't looking, they would still consider it. And this is the highest over the 3 years that we've done it. This is the highest instability that we've seen so far in our assessment in the 3 years. So 51.1% of church staff have seriously considered leaving. If you combine some of the questions together, 59% of church staff members, according to what they've told us, say that they would consider or that they are not firmly committed to staying where they are right now. So 59%. And you know how this works, both in you and in staff members overall. Staff don't typically announce that they're considering leaving. They smile, they serve, and then they give you the resignation letter. We want to stop that, particularly because replacing church staff is really expensive, especially in 2026. The replacement of staff is incredibly expensive. But think about it. Let's say you're at a little bit larger church. Let's say you've got a staff meeting with 10 people attending your staff meeting. If your church is average, and some churches are higher, some churches are lower, but statistically, 5 of those, half the people sitting in your staff meeting have considered leaving this year. And if you're a senior pastor, that should awaken you here a little bit, because if I'm a senior pastor and I've got 10 people in the room and the stats tell me that 5 people have strongly considered leaving in the past year, my question, of course, is, all right, which 5 of you are on the bubble here? Which 5 of you do we need to have some conversations with? And we're going to talk about how to do that here in just a second. The key is knowing which individuals are in which season. Just overall, and then we'll go into this a little bit more particularly in this next discovery number 2. If you're, and this is from the information we got back, but it's not true for every single person, but this is what we learned cumulatively, okay? Most staff members that have been at your church, or if you're a staff member and you've been at your church for under 2 years, you have normally in that first 2 years a pretty low flight risk. And again, flight risk, we just coined that for whether or not that person's going to stick at your church, whether or not they're going to leave during that first 2 years. The flight risk is really pretty low. The problem is, though, that the wall is coming. So you need to build those systems now to make sure that those new staff members, when we talk about this first, actually discovery number 2, we're going to talk about the 3 to 5 year wall. Okay. So if you're in that 3 to 5 year range, which about 37% of everybody that's on the call today is in that 3 to 5 year range, you're sitting right now in that 3, 4, and 5. You're sitting in what we found to be the highest statistical retention risk or highest flight risk. Okay, so if you're feeling a little restless 3 years in, 4 years in, 5 years in, it's probably not just you. It's fairly normal, but that is where you are normally. It's the natural progression of things in years 3, 4, and 5. And then if you're 6 plus, we'll put you in the veteran staff category, okay? You're more stable, but you need to be kept engaged. Longer-term tenured staff can coast very quietly at times. Let's go ahead and look at discovery number 2. It's what we call the 3 to 5 year wall. You can see these are on this graphic. You can see the year 1 scores, 193.3. That's really good. You can see years 3 to 5, it dips like 17 points from year 1. So year 1, you have the honeymoon, everything's going really well. Everybody's giving you the benefit of the doubt. You're loving, making new friends and everything. Year 3, 4, and 5, that's what we're calling the wall. That's when your scores start to dip. And this is really the questions. You start in year 3, 4, and 5. It's not the honeymoon anymore. So you have maybe a few more frustrations. You're seeing a little bit more how the sausage is made at your church. Every church makes sausage, right? Maybe you're seeing some unmet expectations. Years 3, 4, and 5, your internal questions. And if you're in year 3, 4, and 5, and you're asking the questions, how do I succeed here? Or should I even be here? Or why did I take this job in the first place? Those are actually pretty logical questions that a lot of staff members ask in years 3, 4, and 5. So if you're asking those questions as a staff member, don't feel like you're all out in left field. This is kind of a common question for this time period. And if you're a senior pastor, you need to know who your year 3, 4, and 5 people are, right? If you're not in that stage yourself, you need to know who your staff people are and make sure you check in with them once a quarter and just say, hey, how are you doing? And then how are you really doing? So that's the discovery number 2. It's the 3 to 5 year wall is what we call it. All right, discovery number 3, and boy, I got to get moving here if I'm going to get through all 10 of these. Discovery number 3 is what we call the second chair crisis. And this is the difference between the top chair and the second chair, top tier and second tier, primary leader and secondary leaders is pretty vast. And the view from the top is not always the view from the middle. Here is what we can see. Again, these are total scores that came back on the assessment. Senior pastors, lead pastors, average score is about 193.5. Associate pastors, about 169. So that's almost a 25-point gap between senior pastors, lead pastors, and associate pastors. And by associate pastors, worship pastors, youth pastors, any kind of role that's pastoral, but not the senior pastor role. Executive pastors actually have the healthiest score. They're even higher than the senior pastors, 196.1. So between senior and executive pastors, they have the highest scores. They're up here. The rest of the staff comes in about 25 points lower. So here's the problem here. And if you're a senior pastor, you need to think about this. If you're a staff member, you're probably saying, you preach it, Todd. Most senior pastors evaluate staff culture based on their own experience. Okay? That's why your score is so high. You're the one in the driver's seat. You're the one with the vision. You're the one that has control. You're the one that is kind of leading the way. And most senior pastors like where they're going because it's where they want to go. So they view the whole church through that lens of, hey, everything's great. Everybody's following my leadership. But when you look at the staff, their staff goes down about 25 points. So here's the lesson. If you're a lead pastor in the webinar today, your experience of your church, it may not, matter of fact, probably is not exactly what your team is experiencing. You need to ask somebody about that. Ask your team, be really open about that when you're talking about this kind of thing with your staff and as you're looking at how you view the ministry and how they view the ministry. Okay. 63% of church staff that took the assessment this year say that their church has no real clear process. 63%. That's a little more dismal than, I guess, if you put in no process or a process, but it's inconsistent, that comes into about 70%. Wow, 63 to 70%. That's probably about right. Churches that do this well don't spend more money, they spend more intentionality. Okay, it doesn't cost any more money to communicate. And this is one of the areas, this is, matter of fact, the largest area, the whole communication area, is the area that was consistently scored the lowest across the church staff health assessment. If you're in the informal at best camp, it's not a character flaw at all. It's just a gap. And those gaps are pretty easy to close. And the good thing is it doesn't cost a lot of money to close it. Matter of fact, it probably doesn't cost any money. But here's the outcome for this, and then we'll get into the 2 discoveries on communication. Your staff, if you're a senior pastor, executive pastor, your staff deserve to know how the game is going to be scored before the final whistle blows. Okay? So if you're not telling them, you're not leading them. Minimally written job descriptions, a scheduled review, annual at least, but don't save up all your gripes and moans and complaints for the annual review that's tied to your salary. Don't do that. Make sure that they know what they're walking into. Make sure you have honest conversations, not just a checkbox. Okay. That leads us to a couple of discoveries. I'm going to jump around just a little bit here because two of these discoveries, I don't know why I named them, didn't do it sequentially, but I don't know, I didn't. But these are two that have to do with communication. Discovery number 4 is what I call the evaluation disaster. All right, 46% of staff do not receive regular feedback, performance feedback. And as I just said, that ambiguity when they're not getting feedback breeds anxiety, and staff just don't know how to succeed if you're not giving them that feedback. Now, here's a little bit of a twist. Staff are more satisfied with their annual compensation than what they are with how compensation decisions are made. Okay, that ties in with the whole evaluation thing. It's not. This is not a money issue. It's a clarity problem. And again, clarity doesn't cost you anything, but you do need to let your team know how they're doing. If they're doing great, they need to have those pats on the back. If they're not doing great, you need to communicate that in a loving and healthy manner. But really what staff are telling us that they're asking for is, hey, they just want to know, what does success look like? How do I grow here? And really, because 51% are kind of looking at different things at any given point in time, they're really asking, hey, is there a future? Is there a future here for me? Discovery number 7 is just communication breakdown. Oh, before I say that, back on the evaluation disaster and the whole money thing, staff can accept modest salaries. Matter of fact, most staff accept that they're not going to get rich doing ministry. They didn't get in it for the money. So they can accept the modest salaries, but they can't accept not knowing where they stand or what game they're playing or how the game is scored. So you got to communicate that through good evaluations. Discovery number 7 is communication breakdown. This is really interesting. 74%, from what we heard, 74% of churches hold regular staff meetings. Only 59%, though, so that's like a 15% drop, feel like they're kept informed. Even though they're meeting, even though they're staff meetings, a good amount of the people don't feel like they're being informed about important decisions. And 43%, not quite half, but 43%, 4 in 10 people on church staffs don't feel like vision is communicated regularly. So nearly half of your team is just drifting almost without a compass. And also another, I know I'm throwing a lot of stats at you, but I just find, again, it's the geek in me, right? The peer communication is also broken. 42% of church staff say that the other people on their staff don't communicate really well together. So that's a culture issue, not just a leadership issue. Let's continue on. Let's go on to discovery number 5 and number 6, and this has to do with resources. So I'm gonna go over these a little more quickly. Small church struggle. Churches under 100 in attendance have the highest flight risk at about 61% overall, just based on the responses that we got. The reason for that, in small churches, they're usually under-resourced. They have money a lot of times is tight, not always, but you've got maybe a solo pastor or a single pastor that, or even a bivocational pastor that is wearing too many hats. And there's one role at the church. So there's limited growth plans. So that's discovery number 5. Discovery number 6 is compensation and benefits. Overall, of those 7 different things that we measured, compensation and benefits is low. Benefits gap. 30% of church staff are actively dissatisfied with health insurance and retirement offerings. That's just one of the benefit things. 30%, almost a third of church staff are not happy or are actively dissatisfied with their health insurance and retirement offerings. And I know as a church, as a lot of churches, health insurance and retirement those are big ticket items, and it's really hard to do well there, but just know that's a pain point for a lot of staff. Paid time off scores 3.87, and that's not bad. Proof that non-salary benefits do move the needle. Even a modest retirement contribution will send a signal that we care about your future. So even if you're not able to do, what you want to do, what you wish you could do, if you can do something, that makes a difference. You might not be able to match the church down the road on salary, but you can match them on how well your staff feels seen and heard. These are the discovery number 8 and discovery number 9. 71% of staff feel respected by leadership. It's a great number, scored 3.9. But there's always a but there. 54%, only 54% believe that leadership handles conflict well. Okay. That's the lowest number in the whole leadership category. So the lesson here is if you're a senior leader, you can be liked and still not be trusted to do the hard things. That's the nice leader trap. The gap between thriving and struggling staff on conflict handling is 2.18 points. It's one of the biggest differentiators in the whole assessment study that we did. So what does poor conflict handling look like? Poor conflict handling is the problem that everybody knows about that never gets addressed. This is what staff told us in their narrative answers to us. What are the biggest points of conflict that you feel just aren't being addressed? The difficult colleague who has no consequences. The tension that festers on the staff and in the church for years. Those are the areas of conflict that staff say, hey, I don't feel like maybe our leadership is as good at conflict resolution as they should be. Your staff don't need you to be comfortable. They need you to be courageous. So niceness without courage really isn't leadership. So that's discovery number 8. Discovery number 9 is the hollow top. And this is really interesting. We're getting close to the end here. And then I have some really hopefully practical things for you here at the end. So stick around. And at the end, we'll also tell you how to get that 200-page full report with all the geeky numbers in it for absolutely free. We'll give you that link here at the end if you stick around. Discovery number 9 is the hollow top. Okay, so I told you that the numbers are going down slightly, but the way that the health bands are distributed is changing. Okay, so here's what that means. Back when we did the first assessment back in 2023, the exceptional range of everybody that took the assessment in 2023 was about 18.8%. In 2025, the exceptional range, those staff members that ranked exceptional in their answers, went from 18.8 to 14.7. So that is, when you take all the numbers put together, that's a 22% decline just in that exceptional and the healthiest category. Back in 2023, nearly 1 in 5 church staff were thriving. Now that's closer to 1 in 7. So we went from 1 in 5 that were really exceptional to 1 in 7. At the same time, the exceptional kind of contracted a little bit. The fair category, and the fair category are the ones that some days they feel good, some days they don't feel good. They're just kind of right smack dab in the middle. They're not healthy, they're not unhealthy. They're just surviving currently. The fair went from 14.4% up to 19.1%, a 33% increase if you take all the numbers in the struggling category. And the strong and the good, so you have the exceptional and the critical, you have the strong and the good, and you have the fair. The strong and the good stayed pretty flat. The bottom, the critical and the need improvement actually shrank. You think that's good, but as we read the data, we are thinking that, and we can't prove this, but we've lost, this is my opinion, this is more anecdotal from what we see in our work at Chemistry, is that we've lost a lot of people in ministry in the past 3 years. And some of those that were the critical and needs improvement have actually just moved on and are doing something else. We're not creating more crises here. That's not the issue. The issue is that we're losing our stars and the top is really hollowing out. Imagine a building, the foundation looks fine, the middle floors look fine, the penthouse is emptying out, and the second floor is getting really crowded. And that's what's happening to church staff right now. All right, discovery number 10. Hopefully you guys are still with me. I'm talking a mile a minute. Surviving versus thriving. What separates the top 30% from the bottom 30%? And the surprise here is that it's not budget. It's not money. It has really nothing to do with money. It has a lot to do with leadership and with clarity and with care. So here are the big areas where there are gaps between the top 30% and the bottom 30%. Clear direction from leadership, feeling valued by their colleagues and their leadership, and prioritizing staff well-being. Okay, I'm going to share with you in just a moment how you can go from these national insights to more local action. The Church Staff Health Assessment, the full report, absolutely for free. Okay, let me talk about the Monday morning moment. Okay, I've got two Monday morning moments here because here's what happens a lot of times is that you're sitting here today and it's great. You're like inspired and you got to make some changes. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But then Monday morning comes and all the emails and all the anonymous notes and everything that you get on a Monday morning. Monday morning happens, everything happens, and you lose the focus on what needs to do. So I want to give you some really practical things. The first one, I've got two sets here. The first ones are for if you're a senior leader, if you're a senior pastor, an executive pastor, or a board member, what do you do on Monday morning? How do you make sure that what you learned today and what we're learning about church staff all over the country, how do you put that into place where you are? Okay, the first one, if you're a senior pastor, this is your homework. Monday morning, put on your calendar, have one honest conversation that you've been avoiding. All right. There are three things that you can change right now without spending $1. It's clarity and conversation and consistency. You have more influence on your staff and how healthy they are and what their flight risks are than what you would ever think. So assignment number one is have one honest conversation that you've been avoiding. And you probably already know what that is. You know the question that you wake up with every morning and you just put it off till the next day because you don't want to have it. Here's the thing. Conflict avoidance is one of the biggest predictors of staff suffering. And the conversation that you're avoiding, the longer you avoid it, you're not the only one that knows you're avoiding it. Your staff knows you're avoiding it too. So start simple. Start with one person and just maybe take somebody on your staff and with this person who is somebody that you need to have an honest conversation with, just ask them out to coffee, ask them out to lunch and say, hey, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. Hey, you got 30 minutes this week. That's it. Don't overthink it. But if you continue to kick the can down the road and you don't have the honest conversation, every avoided conversation is going to cost you something. It's going to cost you trust and clarity. Eventually, if you keep kicking the conversation that you know you need to have and you keep avoiding it, you're probably going to find a resignation letter. So you either you need to pay it now or you need to pay it later. And if you pay it later, it's going to be much harder to handle. Okay. Question number 2. Find out if your staff and team knows what winning looks like for them. Okay. If we said 63% of your staff, if your staff is normal, don't have a clear picture of what success looks like in their role. So here's a simple test. Pull some job descriptions. If you have job descriptions, take a look. What does excellent look like? Does it even say in their job description what excellent looks like? Or is it just a list of all the tasks that they own? So just have a conversation. In your role, what would a 10 out of 10 month look like? Let's write that down. Let's realign here. Let's make sure that the staff member is engaged and that you know exactly how they're doing. All right. And then number 3, I have 3 for each one of these. Check your 3 to 5 year old, not year old people. They're your 3 to 5 year tenured people. First of all, do you even know if you have a larger staff, do you even know who's in that 3 to 5 year wall period? If you don't, figure out who they are. And again, just make sure that you engage with them. Hey, can we have some coffee this week? I just want to hear how you're really doing. The staff member that you're about to lose is usually not the one that you expected that you would lose if you're not engaged. So be proactive before, the I have to tell you something conversation happens. By the time you hear a resignation, the decision was usually made about 3 months ago. These check-ins are how you find that out before it's too late. Okay, so maybe you're not a senior pastor. And a lot of you here today on the webinar are not senior pastors, and you want to know, okay, I'm not a senior pastor. What do I do on Monday morning? First of all, and this might challenge you a little bit, these 3 things I'm going to share with you, but name what you're actually feeling. Step 1 is not a conversation with your pastor. It's really an honest conversation with yourself. What's the real thing happening with you right now, especially if you're in that 3 to 5 year range? How are you feeling? Are you frustrated? Are you burned out? Are you feeling really good? Do you feel overlooked? Do you feel underpaid? Or you feel like you're missing your calling? All that stuff is real, and you have to name it, and you can't address what you won't name. So the gap between I'm fine and actually what's true inside of you, that's the gap that you need to identify. Assignment number 1. Assignment number 2 is, no, I didn't even change my slide here. Name what you're actually feeling. Assignment number 2, have the conversation you've been rehearsing in the shower. Okay. You've played out this conversation in your head 100 times. If you've got one of these, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The report shows 36% of church staff don't feel safe voicing concerns to leadership. But staying silent is also a choice with some consequences. So I'm not asking you to blow everything up. And some cultures, you have to be really careful about bringing anything up, but you do have to say something. You got to pick the right moment, pick the right person, and say one true thing. And again, if your church culture genuinely punishes honesty, that's probably an important data point on whether or not you're going to be there long-term anywhere. Okay. And then number 3, and man, this is major, and I don't want it to sound negative, but number 3 is decide if you're staying or just not leaving. Okay. This is for the 51% of you that are like, I'm looking, sometimes every day, sometimes casually, sometimes I'm not really looking, but if somebody made me an offer, I'm there. That's this question. Decide if you're staying or if you're just not leaving. There's a difference between choosing to stay and just not having made the decision to leave. Again, the number 51.1% have thought about leaving. A lot of these people still showing up every Sunday, but the best of them have maybe already checked out. So if you're staying, when you ask this question or when you do this kind of self-inspection, you're going to renew your commitment, recommit to the mission, be all in. Half in is absolutely exhausting for you and the rest of the team. Okay. So if you're in, be all in. If the honest answer is that you're just not leaving yet, that's really worth sitting with for a little bit. It might be time to have the harder conversation either with your leader or yourself about what's next. And I'm not trying to get you to leave. That's not my own staffing company, but that's not the goal of this webinar, is to get everybody to leave. We call it silent quitting. You just don't leave. You just don't work because you're not invested. If you're staying, man, lean in. If you're not sure, you need to start thinking about that and having those conversations either with your leader or with yourself. Staying out of inertia isn't loyalty. Real loyalty is a choice that you make with your eyes wide open. Okay, so those are the 10 things that I wanted to share with you today, but you can click that link and download a copy of the free 200-page report. Okay, this goes through all 7 key areas. This is the national report of the 3,000 staff that we've done. There's the link. 3,000 staff that we've talked to in the past 3 years, and includes the 1,400 or whatever it was, 1,200 from the last year as well. 200 pages. It's got an executive summary. If you don't get into all the numbers, you can just read the first 10 pages or so. And it goes into a lot more detail of a lot of the things that we talked about here. Now, a couple of things that we've added this year, and this is not a sales webinar, okay? But I do want to let you know of a couple things that I think might be of interest to you. First of all, if you're a senior or an executive pastor, and you've been listening to all the different numbers and all the different, this is going well, this is not going well. These are the national numbers, but the question is, all right, so these are the national numbers. What's it look like in my church? How are my staff doing? Or how is the staff at my church? How do they compare with the national averages? And we've created and there's a sample report on the website. The website is called churchstaffhealth.com. You can go there anytime, but you can also download the free report, but there's a personal report and a church report here that you might be interested in. There's a sample of the church report. And what we do is it's still anonymized information. So we won't tell you, hey, your worship pastor's getting ready to leave, but we will tell you the overall scope. If you've got 5 staff members or more, I think this report would be helpful to you. We will layer your church staff on top of the national averages, and we'll tell you exactly how you compare in each of these areas. So you can see here, this is just a sample report, but you can see it'll show you, hey, this is your church, how you're doing. This is the national average. This is the difference. And then it goes into each different category, and each question, it'll tell you how your church staff is, how the national average is, and the percentage of greens and things to celebrate, growth opportunities. It's just a lot of information that I think if you're a senior or an executive pastor, this would be really helpful. So there's more information on the website about that. You can order it online. If you're a staff member and you're just like, I want to know how I'm doing. I want to know how I'm doing compared to everybody in the survey. There's also a staff report that's specifically for you. It's a 10-page report that, again, goes through and it says, hey, this is your score. This is the national average. It goes through each of the 7 categories, tells you what your score is compared to the national average, and just gives you your strengths to celebrate, some growth opportunities, some personal reflection questions. So that is also available, and it's just over at churchstaffhealth.com. Okay. So those are a couple of opportunities for you. If this whole idea of what's happening in the staffing world and the church staff health assessment and staff health and all that kind of thing is really important to you, or an area of passion or curiosity for you, I did last year write a book. It's called Silent Alarm: The Quiet Collapse of the Church Staff Pipeline, How to Rebuild It Before It's Too Late. This is really what we've learned collectively in our work at Chemistry Staffing. I think we're doing 80 searches right now for churches across the country. So we get a front row view of kind of the trends that are happening with churches and staffing and candidate pools and all that kind of stuff. If that interests you at all, that book is available as well. And I'd love to connect with you. My website it's a weird URL. It's todd.church. But if you go to the website and just click on the contact button, it'll take you down to this contact form, and you can reach out to me and contact me with any questions you have about the assessment or anything else. All right. If you've got any questions, you can go to the website, todd.church. If you've got a question that I didn't have time to answer today, go ahead and pop that in there and send it off to me, and I'll try and get you an answer for that. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. I'd love to have your feedback as well, so you can leave some feedback for me there at the website as well. All right. Thanks so much. Hope this is helpful, and we'll talk to you soon.